On a Sunday evening in September, the sound of a piano drifted through 17 million living rooms across America. It was the opening theme of American Chronicle, the notes distinct and sharp, signaling that something hidden was about to be dragged into the light. On the screen, a drone shot swept over the Chesapeake Bay. The water was dark glass, reflecting the fairy lights of a tent that cost more than a mid-sized sedan. White linens, crystal stemware, 200 guests raising champagne flutes. And in the bottom corner of the screen, a timestamp. 45 minutes ago. I sat on my sofa in the dark and watched myself. The woman on the television screen looked familiar, but she held herself differently. Her spine was straighter. She sat at a table near the kitchen entrance wearing a green dress that caught the light. She was the only person at that table. The voiceover began. Low. Measured. Marin's voice. On a warm night in Annapolis, guests gathered to celebrate a wedding paid for by one woman. $30,000. Every flower, every chair, this view. The camera cut to a close-up of my face on the screen. I wasn't crying. I was waiting. Among them was the bride's sister, Thea Garrison. And in exactly 3 minutes, she would be told she did not belong here. The footage shifted. It was close-up now, intimate, captured from inside the crowd rather than from the broadcast studio. I knew this angle. It was from the videographer my sister Brooke had hired, the 3-camera crew she insisted on having to capture every angle for her followers. On screen, Brooke stood up. Her face was flushed, her mouth twisted in a way that ruined the contouring of her makeup. She pointed a manicured finger at the woman in the green dress. At me. Go find another table, adopted girl. The audio was crisp. Perfect. You could hear the intake of breath from 200 people. You could hear the clink of a fork hitting a plate. And then you could hear the laughter. Not everyone, but enough. My mother's nervous titter, my father's cough. On the screen, the woman in the green dress stood up. She didn't scream. She didn't throw her drink. She simply raised her glass. Her hand was steady. Enjoy it. It is the last thing I will ever pay for. She set the glass down. She didn't slam it. She placed it on the tablecloth with deliberate care, turned and walked out of the frame. The screen faded to black, leaving only the white logo of American Chronicle. I sat in my apartment on the night it aired 3 months after the wedding and listened to the silence. It wasn't the silence of loneliness. It was the silence of a debt finally completely paid. I looked at my hands. They were the same hands that had written the checks, the same hands that had signed the contracts. But they didn't shake anymore. Then came the sound of a printer churning loud and rhythmic, dragging me backward. 6 months earlier. The printer in my office was jamming again. It made a grinding noise, a mechanical protest that matched the headache blooming behind my right eye. I yanked the paper tray open. Sunlight streamed through the blinds of the Second Roots Foundation, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. My office was a sanctuary of organized chaos. Binders labeled foster placement protocols and educational grants lined the shelves. On the wall, 23 framed photographs stared back at me. Kids at summer camp. Kids holding college acceptance letters. Kids blowing out candles on cakes held by parents who looked at them as if they were the only people in the world. I fixed the jam and pulled out the grant report. It was done. Another $50,000 secured for the mentorship program. I should have felt triumphant. I just felt tired. I picked up my coffee mug. It was lopsided glazed in a color the creator, a 12-year-old named Leo, had called bravery blue. The ceramic was warm against my palm. This was my life. Competent, useful, quiet. Then my phone rang. The screen lit up. Mom. My shoulders dropped 2 inches. It was a physical reflex, instant and uncontrollable, like touching a hot stove. I put the pen down. I took a breath. I answered. Hi, Mom. Thea, honey. Her voice was breathless, the tone she used when she was asking for something but wanted it to sound like she was doing me a favor. We are at the venue. You would not believe the view. Brooke is in tears. Happy tears, obviously. That is great, Mom. It is just... Well, the deposit schedule is a little tighter than we thought. The venue coordinator says they need the full balance for the catering and the space by Friday, to lock in the date. I stared at Leo's lopsided mug. I knew what was coming. I had known it was coming since Brooke got engaged, since she pointed at a ring that cost more than my car and looked at me with those wide, expectant eyes. How much, Mom? 30,000. The number hung in the air between us, heavy and absolute. $30,000. That was half my savings. That was my down payment on a house I hadn't started looking for yet because I kept waiting until I had a little more cushion. 30,000, I repeated. My voice sounded flat even to my own ears. I know, Cheryl's voice hurried on, smoothing over the cracks. But it is a waterfront venue, Thea. You know how Brooke has always dreamed of this. And honestly, after everything we have done, well, I thought you would want to help. The phrase hit its mark with practiced precision. After everything we have done, the roof over my head, the clothes on my back, the name Garrison on my driver's license, the invisible ledger that never balanced to zero, no matter how many checks I wrote. I will transfer it tomorrow, I said. Oh, wonderful. You are an angel, really. Oh, and Thea. Yeah. Brooke is handling the seating chart. She is very stressed about the flow of the room. Just do not make a fuss about where they put you. Okay? You know how she gets about aesthetics. My hand tightened on the phone. Do not make a fuss. The Garrison family motto engraved on the inside of my eyelids. Sure, Mom. Whatever she needs. I hung up. The office was quiet again. I looked at the photos on the wall. 23 kids who had found homes. I had helped them navigate the system, helped their new families understand trauma and attachment. I told them over and over that they were gifts, that they were worthy. I picked up the grant report. My hand was shaking. Just a little. Jamie, my program coordinator, popped her head in the door. She was 24, bright-eyed, and thought I was the most together person she had ever met. Everything okay, Thea? You look like you swallowed a bug. Fine, I said, forcing the muscles in my face to relax into a smile. Just family stuff, wedding logistics. Jamie nodded sympathetically and disappeared. I turned back to my desk. Behind me on the bottom shelf of the bookcase, squeezed between manuals on state compliance and binders of tax forms, was a manila folder. The label was faded, written in Cheryl's looping script, Thea, Adoption Records. It had been there for 10 years. I had never opened the sealed envelope inside. I didn't need to. I knew who I was. I was Thea Garrison, the lucky one, the one who was chosen. I reached for my mouse and opened my banking app. I typed in the numbers. 30000. Transfer confirmed. I closed the laptop. The screen went black, reflecting a woman who looked tired, small, and expensive. The wine bar near the harbor smelled of sea salt and expensive red blends. It was Wednesday evening, the kind of night where the Annapolis waterfront looked like a postcard, sailboats bobbing in the twilight, tourists eating crab cakes, the water lapping against the bulkhead. Renata Okafor sat across from me. She had been my best friend since college, a family law attorney who looked at the world with the skepticism of someone who spent her days reading divorce filings. She was on her second glass of Malbec. I hadn't touched mine. She watched me rotate the stem of my glass. "Read that sentence back to yourself, Thea," she said. Her voice was low but sharp. "It is for her wedding, Wren. It is a waterfront venue that your $30,000 is paying for, and you have been assigned to the back table." She pointed a finger at me. "Not the head table, not the family table, the back table. She is my sister. She is a woman who shares your last name and your bank account. That is not a sister. That is a subscription service." I flinched. I took a sip of wine just to have something to do with my mouth besides frown. "You are being harsh." "Am I?" Wren leaned forward. Her eyes were dark and unyielding. "How many times have we played this scene? You pay for the car. You pay for the vacation. You pay for the bail when Cousin Mike got that DUI. They treat you like a guest in your own family. You come here. I pour wine. We repeat. What am I supposed to do? Say no. I put the glass down a little too hard. Wine sloshed up the sides. And then what? They stop calling. Dad stops looking at me. Ren softened. She reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. Her skin was warm, her grip firm. Thea, you run a foundation that teaches adopted kids they deserve to be loved for who they are, not what they can provide. You give that speech to donors. You give it to social workers. Can you not give it to yourself? I pulled my hand away. I looked out the window. A family was walking along the dock, mother, father, 2 little girls. They were holding hands, a closed loop, a knot that couldn't be untied. It is complicated, I whispered. It is not complicated. It is painful. There is a difference. Ren sat back. She looked tired of this too. You keep writing checks hoping one of them will buy you a seat at their table. But Thea, they are never going to pull up a chair. The words landed like stones in my stomach. Never going to pull up a chair. I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell her about the times it was good. The times Dad called me kiddo. The times Mom bragged to her church group about my title at the foundation. But even as I thought of them, they felt thin, flimsy, like a coat of paint over a rotting wall. I will think about it, I said. It was the lie we both agreed to let me tell. I walked home along the water. The wind had picked up cold and biting off the bay. I wrapped my coat tighter around myself. $30,000. It was done. The money was gone. I unlocked the door to my apartment. It was quiet. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of a boat horn. I tossed my keys on the counter and saw the red light blinking on my landline. I rarely got calls on the landline. It was mostly telemarketers or the alarm company. I pressed the button. Ms. Garrison, my name is Maren Calloway. I am a correspondent with American Chronicle. My breath hitched. American Chronicle. Cheryl watched that show religiously every Sunday night. I would like to talk to you about a story we are developing. It concerns financial patterns in adoptive families. I think you might have a perspective we need. The message ended. The machine beeped. I stood in my kitchen, my coat still on, looking at the blinking red light. A story. Financial patterns. I thought about the $30,000. I thought about the seating chart. I thought about Ren saying subscription service. I should have deleted the message. I should have erased it and gone to bed and pretended I never heard it. I played it again. The coffee shop near City Dock was crowded with tourists enjoying the April breeze, but Maren Calloway sat in a booth at the back surrounded by a stillness that felt unnatural. She did not look like the producers I had seen in movies. She wore no headset, no frantic energy, just a navy blazer over a white tee and a watch that looked heavy on her wrist. I slid into the booth opposite her. I had ordered a latte I did not want, just to have something to hold. Maren did not waste time with small talk. She did not ask about the weather or the parking situation. She looked at me with eyes that seemed to be recording everything, the tension in my shoulders, the way I gripped the ceramic mug, the fact that I had checked my phone twice in 30 seconds. I know what Second Roots does, Thea, she said. Her voice was low, cutting through the hiss of the espresso machine. I have read your annual reports. You do good work. It sounded like a compliment, but it felt like a preamble. That sounds like an important story you are working on, I said, keeping my voice professional. My boardroom voice. It is an important story. Maren leaned in slightly. We have interviewed 11 families so far, 11 different states, different economic backgrounds, different races, but the pattern is almost identical every time. The adopted child pays for everything. Weddings, mortgages, medical bills. They become the financial safety net. And in return, they are treated as an outsider at every single family event. I took a sip of the foam, It tasted like cardboard. 11 families, I repeated. 11. Marin let the number hang there. And your name came up through the advocacy network. 3 separate people mentioned you. Not as a subject, but as someone who would understand. I understand the data, I said, retreating to safety. I see the statistics at the foundation. I can connect you with, I do not need contacts, Thea. I need someone willing to be on camera. My fingers tightened on the cup until my knuckles turned white. On camera. Saying it out loud. Admitting that the Garrison family was not a quirk of personality, but a systemic failure. If I did that, I would be setting a match to the only bridge I had left. I cannot do that, I said. My family is private. Marin watched me. She did not push. She did not argue. She simply reached into her blazer pocket and slid a card across the table. It was plain white stock with black text. Marin Calloway, American Chronicle. Take your time, she said. But Thea, the families I have talked to, every single one of them said the same thing. They said I wish someone had told my story when I was still in it. Not after. While it was happening. She stood up. She did not look back as she walked out the door, her stride efficient and purposeful. I sat there for 20 minutes. The latte went cold. I picked up the card. The edges were sharp. I opened my wallet and slid it into the slot behind my driver's license, hiding it but knowing it was there. Like a secret weapon I hoped I would never have to use. By Saturday evening, the card burned a hole in my pocket. The Garrison family home in suburban Annapolis was glowing. Every window was lit from within, casting squares of gold onto the lawn that my father mowed in diagonal stripes every Thursday. I parked my 10-year-old sedan behind a row of leased luxury SUVs. I could smell the party before I reached the front door. It was the scent of charcoal grills and expensive white wine underpinned by the heavy floral notes of my mother's perfume Estée Lauder Beautiful. That smell was the sensory backdrop of my childhood. It smelled like Sunday church and silent disapproval. I walked up the porch steps. I had transferred the funds yesterday, watching my savings account drain down to a number that made my chest tight. The front door opened. Cheryl stood there radiant in a blue silk blouse, a glass of Chardonnay already in her hand. Thea. You made it. She did not hug me. She stepped back to let me in, her eyes darting over my shoulder to see if anyone more important was arriving behind me. The transfer went through yesterday, Mom. For the venue. Cheryl nodded without looking at me. She adjusted her wine glass. Oh, good, she said. Brooke was worried it would not come through in time. No, thank you. No, I know this is a lot. Just relief that the ATM was working. She turned back to the party. Go grab a drink, honey. Brooke is in the kitchen with her friends. I walked into the living room. It was crowded with 30 or 40 people. A banner hung over the fireplace. Brooke and Trent forever. I had paid for the banner. I had paid for the catering trays circulating the room. I had paid for the flowers on the mantelpiece. I found Brooke in the kitchen. She was the center of gravity as always. She wore a white cocktail dress that looked suspiciously bridal, her hair highlighted to perfection, holding court with a group of bridesmaids I recognized from her Instagram. Trent was beside her, looking happy and slightly dazed, his arm draped protectively around her waist. I stepped into the circle's periphery. I started stacking dirty appetizer plates near the sink, an automatic reflex. If I was useful, I had a reason to be here. Brooke's friend Kelsey, a blonde woman with a piercing laugh, spotted me. Oh my gosh, Brooke, your sister is so sweet. She has been helping in the kitchen this whole time. Brooke turned. Her smile was bright, practiced, and did not reach her eyes. She held a champagne flute in one hand and gestured to me with the other, like a museum curator presenting a minor exhibit. That is Thea, Brooke said. She is our adopted sister. She has always been generous. The room did not stop. The earth did not shake. But I felt the air leave my lungs. Our adopted sister. Not my sister. Not Thea. The word adopted was not a descriptor. It was a boundary line. It was a disclaimer issued to the room. She is here, but she is not of us. If she looks different, if she acts different, that is why. Kelsey blinked, her smile faltering for a microsecond. Oh, I didn't know she was... It is fine. Brooke laughed, a tinkling sound that grated on my nerves. We do not really make a thing of it. She turned back to her circle. The conversation flowed over me like water around a rock. I stood by the sink, gripping the edge of the counter. I looked at Trent. He offered me a small, apologetic smile, the kind you give to a stranger on a crowded subway before turning back to his fiancée. I wanted to leave. I wanted to tear up the check that was currently sitting in my mother's pocket. But I stayed. I stayed because I had been trained to stay. An hour later, Brooke raised her glass. To the most amazing family a girl could ask for, she shouted. Cheers erupted. Phones were raised. Mom, Dad. Come on, photo time. Brooke waved her parents over. Dale and Cheryl hurried to her side. Trent stepped in. The four of them huddled together in front of the fireplace, arms linked, teeth gleaming. A perfect tableau of genetic success. I stood 6 feet away, holding a tray of empty crab dip ramekins. I waited for the wave. I waited for someone to say, Thea, get in here. The photographer, a friend of Brooke's, snapped 3 rapid shots. Perfect, Brooke squealed. They broke the huddle. They began reviewing the photos on the camera screen, laughing at their expressions. Nobody had called my name. I turned around. I walked into the kitchen, placed the tray on the counter, and walked out the back door. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, staring at the perfectly manicured lawn, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. I had paid for every glass they raised, and I was not in the frame. The drive home was a blur of highway lights and dark water. When I unlocked my apartment door, the silence greeted me like an old friend. I tossed my keys on the table and pulled out my wallet. I took out the white card. Marin Calloway, American Chronicle. I sat down at my laptop. I typed her name into the search bar. The results filled the screen. 2 Peabody Awards, a National Magazine Award, a clip from last year showing her interviewing a nursing home director who ended up in federal prison. She was real. She was dangerous. And she had given me her card. I opened my banking app. I navigated to the transaction history. There it was. Wire transfer, $30,000. Completed. I hit print. The printer whirred to life, the same grinding noise as before. I watched the paper slide out. A single sheet of paper confirming that I had bought a wedding I was barely invited to. I took a manila folder from my desk drawer. I slid the paper inside. It was the first piece of evidence. I did not know then that it would be the first of many. Sunday morning broke gray and humid. I sat at my kitchen table, still wearing the yoga pants I had slept in. My coffee had gone cold an hour ago. I picked up the phone. I dialed the number on the white card. It rang once, twice. This is Marin. She did not say hello. She answered as if she had been sitting by the phone waiting for me. The engagement party was... Last night, I said. My voice was steady, surprising me. How did it go? I looked out the window at the harbor. I saw a seagull fighting the wind, trying to land on a piling. I gave them a $30,000 check for the wedding, I said. Nobody said thank you. My sister introduced me to her friends as her adopted sister. I spent the evening serving appetizers, and nobody called me over for the family photo. Silence on the other end. Not the silence of disinterest, but the silence of someone listening with their entire body. I will do the documentary, I said. Are you sure? Thea Marin asked. Her voice was gentle now, stripped of the professional veneer. Once we start, it changes things. You cannot unsee it. I looked at the manila folder on my desk. I looked at the adoption file on the bookshelf, sealed tight. I have never been more sure of anything in my life. Good, Marin said. I will be in touch on Monday. I hung up. I walked to the window and pressed my forehead against the cool glass. The seagull had finally landed. It sat there ruffled and solitary, riding out the wind. Okay, I whispered to the empty room. Okay. Something in my chest, a tight knot I had carried for 32 years, began to loosen. It was not relief. It was not happiness. It was the cold, hard clarity of a woman who had finally decided to stop knocking on a door that was never going to open. I was done asking for a seat. I was going to build my own table. 2 weeks later, I sat in a production office in Washington, D.C. that smelled of ozone and stale coffee. It was a stark contrast to the warm, wood-paneled quiet of the Second Roots Foundation. Here the air hummed with the sound of servers and the low murmur of people who chased deadlines for a living. Marin Calloway stood by a whiteboard covered in timelines. She looked entirely in her element, wearing a gray silk blouse that looked soft but suggested armor. "We need to be clear about the ground rules, Thea," she said, uncapping a marker. "Maryland is an all-party consent state. That means we cannot record anyone without their knowledge. It is a felony, and more importantly, it kills our credibility." I sat in a rolling chair that squeaked every time I shifted my weight. I kept my hands folded in my lap to stop myself from fidgeting. "So no hidden microphones," I said. "No secret cameras." "Absolutely not," Marin said. She drew a line on the board. "We are doing embedded journalism. I will attend family events as your friend and colleague. That is not a lie. We are colleagues now. If they ask what I do, I tell them I work in media consulting." Also true. "And if someone searches my name, they will find the consulting profile. My on-air credits are under Marin C. Townsend, my mother's maiden name. It keeps the work separate. And if they ask about the story, then we tell the truth." Marin turned to face me. "We tell them I am researching financial dynamics in families. But Thea, they won't ask. People rarely ask questions when they are busy talking about themselves." I thought about Brooke. I thought about the way she turned every conversation back to her wedding colors, her venue, her stress. Marin was right. "What happens in the documentary?" I asked. "We use your on-camera interviews," Marin explained. "We use public footage. Social media posts are fair game. And we use my observations. I become the witness." She paused, capping the marker with a sharp click. "You are going to be a data point, Thea. 1 of 12. We are not targeting your family. We are targeting a pattern, a data point." The words should have felt cold, but they felt like a relief. A data point was clinical. A data point did not cry in the bathroom during engagement parties. A data point was just evidence. "I can handle being a data point," I said. "Good," Marin said. She checked her watch. "Because dinner is on Sunday, and I am coming with you." The Garrison. Sunday dinner was an institution. It was built on pot roast heavy gravy and the unspoken requirement that we all perform our roles with Academy Award-winning commitment. I pulled into the driveway at 5 o'clock sharp. Marin's rental car was already there, parked neatly beside my father's truck. My stomach did a slow roll of familiar nausea that I usually swallowed down with a glass of iced tea. I walked in. The house smelled of roasted beef and lemon polish. It was the smell of obligation. Marin was already in the living room. She was standing by the china cabinet examining the framed photos. There were dozens of them. Brooke at graduation, Brooke at prom, Brooke winning a third-grade spelling bee. And tucked in the corners, partially obscured by the frames in front of them, were a few of me. Me at a foundation gala, but the lighting was bad. Me at college, but my eyes were closed. My mother Cheryl bustled in from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a floral apron. "Thea, honey, you are late," she said, though I was exactly on time. "And this must be your friend from work." Marin turned. Her smile was polite, calibrated perfectly to be warm, but professional. "Marin Calloway," she said, extending a hand. "Thank you for having me, Mrs. Garrison. Thea speaks so highly of your Sunday dinners. Oh, please call me Cheryl." My mother preened. She loved an audience. "Well, come sit down. Dale is just carving the roast." We moved to the dining room. The table was set for 6. My father sat at the head, Cheryl at the foot. Brooke and Trent were on one side. That left the 2 seats on the other side for Maren and me. I watched Maren sit where she was directed. She did not slouch. She did not fidget. She simply observed. Her eyes moved from the centerpiece to the heavy curtains to the seating arrangement, cataloging everything. For the first time in my life, I watched my family through someone else's eyes. And the view was terrifying. Dale Garrison came in with the platter. He was a man who believed silence was a form of strength, mostly because he didn't have much to say. So he grunted, serving a slice of beef to Maren. "You work with Thea at the foundation. I do some consulting work in the media space," Maren said smoothly. "Thea's organization does remarkable things. The mentorship program alone has improved placement stability by 40%. I stared at my plate. I had written that statistic in the grant report. I didn't know Maren had memorized it. Cheryl waved a hand dismissively, passing the bowl of mashed potatoes. "Oh yes, it is a nice little project. Thea has always been good with those kids." The table went quiet for a second. Those kids. Not the children. Not her clients. Those kids. Said with the same tone one might use for stray cats that had been fed on the porch. I looked at Maren. Her face did not change. She buttered a roll, but I saw her index finger tap once against the white tablecloth, a tiny rhythmic motion. She was recording. Brooke didn't look up from her phone. She was texting under the table, her thumbs flying. "Thea, did you wire the deposit for the florist?" she asked, her voice muffled by a mouthful of roast. "I did it yesterday," I said. "Good," Brooke said. She finally looked up, her eyes scanning me critically. "Oh, and I need you at the dress fitting on Thursday. The bridal shop has a tiny lot and someone needs to handle the parking situation for the bridesmaids. It is going to be a nightmare if we do not organize the cars." I paused with my fork halfway to my mouth. "You want me to come to your dress fitting?" I asked slowly. "To park cars." "Well, you are not getting a dress," Brooke said as if this explained everything. "And you know how stressed I get about logistics. Trent cannot come, he has work. So I need you." She didn't ask. She didn't say please. She just assigned the task like I was a staff member she wasn't paying. Trent looked up, his face flushing slightly. He was a good man, or at least he tried to be. He just didn't know how to stop a train that had been running on these tracks for 30 years. "Thea," he said, his voice earnest. "Brooke showed me the venue photos. It is incredible. You are incredibly generous to Trent. Can you get me more water?" Brooke cut him off, holding out her glass without looking at him. "This roast is salty." Trent's mouth snapped shut. He took the glass. I looked at Maren again. She was eating calmly, but her eyes were locked on Brooke. It wasn't a glare. It was the look of a scientist observing a particularly fascinating bacteria under a microscope. The conversation drifted to the wedding as it always did. The appetizers, the music, the seating chart. "Speaking of seating," Dale said, clearing his throat. "Thea, your mother mentioned the chart." I stiffened. "We put you at table 14, Cheryl said brightly. "It is near the kitchen entrance, which is actually very convenient. You know, in case we need anything run back and forth. And we thought it would be best if you sat there to keep things simple. Code 4 to keep you out of the photos. Code 4 so people do not ask why the sisters do not look alike. Just do not make waves," Honeydale added, looking at his potatoes. "You know how Brooke gets." My hand moved to my purse resting on the floor. My fingers brushed the leather wallet where Maren's card sat. I wanted to pull it out. I wanted to slam it on the table and say, "She is not a consultant. She is a journalist. And you are all going to be on television." But I didn't. I took a breath that tasted like potting soil and swallowed it. "Okay, Dad," I said. "Table 14. The drive back to my apartment was silent. Maren drove her rental car, navigating the dark highway with precise movements. I stared out the window at the passing streetlights, feeling exposed and raw like I had been peeled. Maren didn't turn on the radio. She waited until we were crossing the Severn River Bridge, the water black beneath us. "How long has it been like that?" she asked. Like what I feigned ignorance, though I knew exactly what she meant. Thea, she said, her voice devoid of judgment but heavy with fact. Your mother referred to your 12-year legacy as a nice little project. Your sister asked you to handle parking at a dress fitting for a wedding you are solely funding. Your father told you not to make waves. And nobody, not a single person, asked you a question about your life. I stared at the dashboard lights. Put like that, listed out like an inventory of injuries, it sounded grotesque. Is that not normal? I asked. The question felt childish small. Marin glanced at me. The passing headlights illuminated her face, sharp and serious. No, Thea. That is not normal. That is exploitation disguised as family tradition. She turned her eyes back to the road. I have interviewed people who were beaten. I have interviewed people who were robbed. But what happened at that table was a different kind of violence. It was the violence of erasure. They erase you, Thea, and then they hand you the bill for the eraser. I closed my eyes. Tears pricked at the corners, hot and sudden. Erasure. I had spent my whole life trying to be indelible. I thought if I paid enough, if I did enough, if I smiled enough, I would finally leave a mark. But Marin was right. I was just the invisible ink they used to write their own stories. We pulled up to my apartment complex. Marin put the car in park. Start writing it down, she said. Everything. Dates, times, direct quotes. Do not let it evaporate. I nodded. I got out of the car and watched her drive away, her taillights fading into the night. I walked into my apartment. It was quiet, my sanctuary. I went straight to my desk. I opened the top drawer and pulled out a fresh moleskin notebook. Black cover, blank pages. I sat down. I picked up a pen. My hand hovered over the paper. I thought about the roast beef. I thought about the words, nice little project. I thought about table 14. I began to write. April 14th, Sunday dinner. Brooke asked me to handle parking for her dress fitting. Mom called Second Roots a nice little project. Dad told me not to make waves. Trent tried to thank me for the money, and Brooke cut him off to ask for water. I wrote it all. I wrote until my hand cramped. Then I wrote one last line. Marin says this is not normal. I think I have known that for a long time. I just did not want to be the one to say it. I closed the journal. It made a soft thud in the quiet room. I stood up and walked to the bookshelf. I placed the black notebook next to the manila folder with the faded label, Thea, Adoption Records. 2 sealed things. 2 containers of truth that I was too afraid to fully open. I touched the spine of the journal. It felt solid. Real. The wedding planning was just beginning. I had 3 months. And for the first time in 32 years, I was not going to let the moments evaporate. I was going to keep them. I was going to collect them. And when the time came, I was going to make them look at what they had done. The month of May dissolved into a blur of credit card receipts and silence. I lived in 2 worlds now. In one, I was Thea Garrison, the dutiful sister navigating the minefield of Brooke's wedding demands. In the other, I was a witness documenting the wreckage of my own life in a black moleskin notebook. The journal became my constant companion. It sat on my nightstand heavy with ink and indignation. The bridal salon La Rêve smelled of lavender and desperation. It was a cavernous space filled with mirrors and aggressive white lighting designed to make $5,000 dresses look like necessities. I sat on a small velvet ottoman in the corner, holding a bottle of lukewarm water I had brought from my car. Brooke stood on the pedestal in the center of the room, surrounded by her 3 bridesmaids. They were all blonde, all wearing matching athleisure, and all making cooing noises that sounded like pigeons fighting over a crust of bread. "Oh my God," Brooke Kelsey squealed. "You look like a literal princess." Brooke turned the layers of silk and tulle swishing around her ankles. She looked at herself in the trifold mirror, her expression critical. She adjusted the sweetheart neckline, frowning. "Does it make my arms look heavy?" she asked. "You are insane," another bridesmaid said. "You are tiny." I shifted on the ottoman. My back ached. We had been here for 2 hours. Nobody had asked me what I thought of the dress. Nobody had asked if I wanted water. I was just the person holding the purse. Brooke spun around, catching my eye in the mirror. "Thea, go tell the consultant we are ready to pay," she said, "and ask her if they can rush the alterations. I need the hem up by an inch." I stood up. My legs were stiff. I walked to the front desk, where a woman with a severe bun was typing on a computer. "My sister is ready," I said. The woman looked up. "Garrison." "Yes. That will be $4,200 for the balance plus the rush fee." I pulled out my wallet. I handed her the card. It was the same card I used for groceries for gas for the life I actually lived. The machine beeped. Approved. I walked back to the pedestal with the receipt. Brooke was taking a selfie with the bridesmaids, pouting her lips. "All set," I said. Brooke glanced at the receipt in my hand, but did not take it. "Awesome," she said, turning back to Kelsey. "Okay, so for the bachelorette, are we thinking Cabo or Nashville? Because if we do Nashville, I need specific boots." I stood there for a moment, the receipt fluttering in the air conditioning. I folded it. I put it in my pocket. That night in the journal, I wrote May 2nd. La Rêve Bridal, paid $4,200. Brooke asked me to tell the consultant she was ready. She did not say thank you. She did not introduce me to the staff. I was the wallet with legs. 3 days later, my phone pinged with a notification from the family group chat. Brooke final seating chart attached. "Don't freak out if you're not near the front." The room is weirdly shaped, so I had to get creative with the layout. I opened the PDF on my phone. It was a colorful map of the reception tent. The head table was a long rectangle at the top marked in gold. Tables 1 through 5 were clustered around the dance floor, labeled Family and Wedding Party. I scrolled down. And down. Table 14 was a small circle tucked into the back corner, directly next to a gray square labeled Catering Entry/Kitchen. I zoomed in. Thea Garrison, Marin Calloway, Cousin Mike, the one with the DUI. Great Aunt Aita, who fell asleep at 7 p.m. I stared at the screen until the pixels blurred. It was not an oversight. It was geography. It was a physical map of my place in their hearts. I typed a message in the chat. "Thea, hey Brooke. Table 14 looks really close to the service doors. Is it going to be noisy there? Maybe I could sit with Aunt Sarah at table 5. The dots bubbled immediately. Brooke. "It's just logistics, Thea. Don't make this about you. I put you there because you're good with Mike and Ida. I need someone responsible back there." Then a private message from Cheryl popped up. "Mom, honey, Brooke is so stressed. Please just go with the flow. You know how she gets." I put the phone down on my kitchen counter. The screen went dark, but the image of that little circle in the corner burned behind my eyes. May 5th, I wrote later. Table 14, kitchen adjacent. Brooke says it is logistics. Mom says go with the flow. I say it is exile. The final blow came in the form of a voice note. It was late May, 3 weeks before the wedding. I was in bed scrolling through messages when Brooke sent an audio file to the group. "Guys, oh my God, I have the best news!" Her voice was breathless, tinny through the speaker. "I just got off the phone with the videography team. I decided to upgrade to the Platinum Cinematic package. It is a 3-camera crew. 3. They are going to have a drone, a roving cam for guest reactions, and a steady cam for the vows. It is going to look like a literal movie. My followers are going to die. 3 cameras. I sat up in bed. The room was dark, illuminated only by the street lamp outside. She was hiring a professional documentary crew. She was paying thousands of dollars, or rather using the money I gave her to pay thousands of dollars, to ensure that every single second of her triumph was recorded in high definition. She wanted to be the star of a movie. She wanted every angle covered. I picked up my pen. My hand was steady. May 20th. Brooke hired a 3-camera crew. She wants to capture everything. She thinks she is filming a fairy tale. She does not realize she is filming evidence. I needed to understand why. Not why Brooke was doing this, that was simple narcissism, but why I was the only one who saw it. Or why Marin, a stranger with a Peabody Award, saw it too. I met Marin at her hotel in D.C. a few days later. It was a generic suite, beige and impersonal, but Marin had transformed the dining table into a command center. Stacks of files covered every inch of wood. She was watching footage on her laptop when I arrived. It was an interview with a woman in Ohio, her face obscured by shadow. I paid off his student loans, the woman on the screen was saying. $40,000. And when he got married, I wasn't allowed in the family photo because I wasn't blood. Marin paused the video. She looked up at me. She looked tired, the kind of tired that comes from carrying other people's ghosts. Why this story, I asked. I sat down across from her, pushing a stack of papers aside. You have done Wall Street fraud. You have done pharmaceutical cover-ups. Why adopted families? Marin closed the laptop. She walked to the window and looked out at the city skyline. Because I was adopted too, she said. The room went silent. The hum of the air conditioner seemed to grow louder. I didn't know, I said. Marin turned. Her face was soft, stripped of the reporter's edge. I was adopted at 3 days old, a couple in Vermont. They couldn't have children. She smiled, a small, private thing. They never made me feel different. I was simply theirs. I didn't know families could use adoption as a weapon until I started reporting. I thought my experience was universal. She walked back to the table and picked up a file. Then I met the first family for this segment, a woman in Omaha. She paid her parents' mortgage for 5 years. When her father died, the obituary listed her as a special family friend. I flinched. Special family friend. It was the same dialect as our adopted sister. And then another, Marin continued. And another. 11 families. Thea. The pattern is always the same. Always the adopted one who pays. Always the adopted one who fixes the messes. Always the adopted one at the back table. She tossed the file back onto the stack. My mother called last week, Marin said quietly. She asked about the story. She told me to make sure I tell people that being adopted means being chosen twice. That is how my family talks about it. Chosen by birth, chosen by love. I looked at my hands. Chosen twice. My biological mother had chosen to give me up. My adoptive parents had chosen to take me in. But had they chosen me? Or had they chosen the idea of a child? A prop for their family portrait. A safety net for their old age. It is a beautiful lie, isn't it? I said. Chosen twice. Marin looked at me. It doesn't have to be a lie, Thea. For some people, it is the truth. Just not for you. And not for the 11 other people in these files. She sat down. Does your family know, I asked? No, Marin said. And they won't until it airs. Because if I tell them, they will think I am attacking the institution of adoption. I am not. I am attacking the exploitation of it. I nodded. We sat there in silence, 2 women from opposite ends of the spectrum bound by the same word. I needed a different kind of lens. Marin gave me the journalist's eye. Ren gave me the law. I went to Ren's office in downtown Annapolis the next afternoon. It was a space filled with mahogany bookshelves and the scent of old paper. Ren was behind her desk reviewing a custody agreement. She pushed the papers aside when I walked in. I handed her my journal. Read the last 10 entries, I said. Ren opened the black notebook. She read in silence. I watched her face. Ren had a lawyer's face, impassive, unreadable. But I saw her jaw tighten as she read the entry about the videographer. She closed the book. Legally. She asked. Legally. There is nothing criminal here, Thea. Ren leaned back in her chair. Being an asshole isn't a crime in Maryland. Taking money that was freely given isn't theft. Emotional cruelty isn't a tort we can sue for unless it causes demonstrable psychiatric injury, and even then the bar is incredibly high. I knew that. I felt my shoulders slump, but Ren said, raising a finger, "This isn't a court case. This is a public exposure case." She tapped the journal. "You are not trying to send Brooke to jail. You are trying to break the spell. Brooke is a type 3 on the Enneagram, right? The achiever." I nodded. "With a heavy wing 4. She thinks she is special. Unique." "Exactly." Ren stood up and walked to the window. Her entire identity is her image, her brand. The perfect family, the perfect wedding, the perfect life. That is her currency. She turned back to me. "If you take away her money, she will find another source. If you stop talking to her, she will play the victim. But if you take away her image, if you show the world the cracks in the porcelain, she loses everything she cares about," I whispered. "Not everything," Ren corrected. "She still has Trent, she still has your parents, she still has her health. But she loses the lie. And for someone like Brooke, the lie is the only thing that matters." I thought about Brooke's Instagram feed, the curated joy, the filters. I am not trying to destroy her, Ren. Ren looked at me with sad eyes. "You don't have to destroy her, Thea. You just have to turn on the lights. The truth will do the rest." A term. That night the apartment was quiet. I sat on my couch with my laptop, the blue light of the screen illuminating the dark living room. I opened Instagram. I typed in the handle at Brooke G. Life. Her grid was a mosaic of pastels and bright smiles. It was beautiful. It was compelling. It was a lie. I scrolled back to February. There was a photo of us at brunch. We were holding mimosas. Brooke's head was resting on my shoulder. Caption: "So blessed to have the most amazing sister. She is my rock, my ride or die. Love you at Thea Garrison. #sister goals. #blessed. #family." I remembered that brunch. It was the day she asked me to pay for the engagement party. She had spent the first hour complaining about Trent's mother and the second hour crying about how expensive venues were. The photo was taken 5 minutes after I agreed to write the check. I took a screenshot. I scrolled to March. A photo of me handing her an envelope. It was the $30,000 check. Brooke was covering her mouth with her hands in feigned shock. Caption: "When your sister surprises you with the most generous wedding gift I don't deserve, her #wedding season, #best sister surprise." We had negotiated the amount for 3 days. She had sent me invoices. Screenshot. I scrolled to April. The family dinner, the one where Marin came. The photo showed the whole table heavy with roast beef and silver candlesticks. Caption: "Sunday dinners with the whole fam. Nothing matters more than blood. #Garrison Strong. #Tradition. Nothing matters more than blood." The words sat there bold and unashamed. She had typed them. She had looked at a photo that included me, her adopted sister, and typed, "Nothing matters more than blood." It was not a slip of the tongue. It was a manifesto. My hand hovered over the keyboard. I felt a cold, hard rage settling in my chest. It wasn't the hot anger of the engagement party. It was something older, something permanent. I took the screenshot. I opened my email. I attached the 3 images. Subject: "The contrast body." This is what she shows the world. This is what I get in private. Use them. I hit send. A minute later, my phone buzzed. A text from Marin. Received. "We are going to show them both." I closed the laptop. The room went black. I sat in the dark listening to the silence, and for the first time, I didn't feel alone. I felt ready. The evidence was gathered. The cameras were hired. The stage was set. Brooke wanted a movie. We were going to give her one. The last week of May felt heavy, like the humidity that settles over DC before a summer storm. I sat in a low chair in Marin's editing suite, the room dark except for the glow of 3 monitors. The air smelled of ozone and the takeout coffee Marin kept drinking. Marin sat at the console, her hand hovering over a specialized keyboard. "This is a rough cut, Thea," she said. "The audio is not mixed and the color grading is off. But the narrative is there." She pressed a button. On the screen, a woman with graying hair sat in a kitchen in Denver. She was wringing her hands in her lap. "I paid for the addition on their house," the woman said. "My dad said he needed a suite for when he got older. I paid for it. Then when Christmas came, they told me there wasn't enough room for me to stay. They gave the suite to my brother's kids." Cut to black. Then a man in Savannah sitting on a porch. "You think if you write a big enough check the transaction clears," he said. "You think you finally bought the love. But the check clears and you are still standing outside." Then my face appeared on the screen. It was from the interview Marin had filmed in her hotel room. I looked pale. My eyes were wide, darting away from the lens. "I just want to be part of the picture," the on-screen Thea said. Her voice cracked. "I just want them to look at me the way they look at her." Marin stopped the playback. The silence in the small room was deafening. I stared at my own face frozen on the monitor. I looked small. I looked desperate. "Do I really look that broken?" I asked. The question hung in the air, fragile. Marin swiveled her chair to face me. "You look that honest. There is a difference." I nodded, but my stomach twisted. Seeing the documentary taking shape made it real in a way the journal entries hadn't. It was undeniable proof of the system I lived in. But as I drove back to Annapolis, a treacherous thought began to bloom in the back of my mind. It was a weed resilient and stubborn. I thought about the wedding now only 2 weeks away. I thought about the $30,000. Maybe the documentary was a safety net I wouldn't need. Maybe, just maybe, seeing my generosity would finally change them. Maybe this time would be different. The want was still there, alive and kicking, begging for a seat at the table. 2 weeks before the wedding, I walked into a private dining room at a bistro in downtown Annapolis for Brooke's bridal shower. The room was an explosion of pink and gold. I had paid for the balloon arch. I had paid for the champagne tower that glimmered in the corner. I had paid for the custom cookies shaped like engagement rings. Brooke sat in the center of the room wearing a white lace dress and a satin sash that read "Bride" in gold glitter. She was opening gifts, performing gratitude for an audience of 20 women. I found my seat. It was at the edge of the room near the server station. I sat down and placed my purse on my lap, preparing to disappear for 3 hours. Then a chair scraped beside me. I looked up. Trent slid into the empty seat. He looked out of place in the sea of estrogen and pastel florals, loosening his tie as if he had just escaped a boardroom. "Hey, Thea," he said. I blinked. "Shouldn't you be up there with Brooke?" "I have been up there for 2 hours," he said, grabbing a bottle of sparkling water. "I need a conversation that is not about centerpieces or the merits of hydrangeas versus peonies." He grinned. It was a genuine expression crinkling the corners of his eyes. Trent was the kind of guy who held doors open for strangers and actually meant it when he asked how your day was. He took a sip of water and turned to me, his expression sobering. I wanted to say something, he said. "I know things can be tense with the wedding planning. But Brooke talks about you, you know." I stiffened, my defenses instantly rising. "She does, all the time," Trent said. He lowered his voice, leaning in. "She talks about the foundation, about how you basically created this whole organization from nothing. She told me about the mentorship program you launched last year." I stared at him. Brooke had never asked me a single question about the mentorship program. "She respects what you have built," Thea Trent continued. I think she might even be a little jealous. You have this whole identity, this purpose. She is still trying to figure that part out." My heart hammered against my ribs. Jealous respect. The words felt like cool water on a burn I had been nursing for 30 years. Trent was not a liar. I looked at his open, earnest face. He believed what he was saying, which meant Brooke had said it. Behind closed doors, when she didn't have an audience to perform for, She spoke about me with respect. The wall I had built brick by brick for the last 3 months began to crack. And the wedding, Trent added. I just want you to know how grateful I am. $30,000 is... that is extraordinary. Brooke is lucky to have you. We both are. My throat went tight. I looked down at my hands. Thank you, Trent, I managed to say. You have no idea what that means. For a moment the room seemed to brighten. The pink balloons didn't look tacky. They looked festive. The laughter didn't sound exclusionary. It sounded joyful. I looked over at Brooke. She was holding up a blender, beaming. Maybe I had been wrong. Maybe Marin was wrong. Maybe the stress of the wedding had just brought out the worst in her, but underneath the sister I wanted was actually there. The documentary felt suddenly aggressive, premature, a betrayal of this fragile, beautiful thing that was starting to grow. I pulled my phone out under the table. I opened my text thread with Marin. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. Can we push the timeline? I think things are changing. I stared at the words. I didn't send them. A voice in my head that sounded a lot like Ren whispered, "They are never going to pull up a chair." I put the phone back in my purse. The text remained unsent, a ghost of a hope I couldn't quite kill. The shower ended, and we all went back to my parents' house to unload the gifts. The house was chaotic, filled with the debris of celebration gift bags, tissue paper, leftover cake. I needed to use the restroom. I walked up the stairs, the plush carpet muffling my footsteps. The hallway was dim, lined with the family photos that cataloged a history I was barely part of. As I reached the top of the landing, I heard voices coming from Brooke's old bedroom. The door was slightly ajar. It was Cheryl and Brooke. I reached for the handle of the bathroom door, intending to slip inside and ignore them. But then I heard my name. "I know, sweetheart," Cheryl was saying. Her voice was soothing, the tone she used to calm a fretful toddler. "We will just schedule the family photos during the cocktail hour. She will be busy mingling. She won't even notice until it is done." I froze. My hand hovered over the brass knob. "And the video?" Brooke asked. Her voice was sharp, anxious. "I told the videographer to keep it tight on the immediate family. I do not need her showing up in my content looking like she doesn't belong." "She doesn't, honey," Cheryl said. "She knows that." I stood in the hallway. The air conditioner hummed a low drone that sounded like the blood rushing in my ears. "Keep it tight on the immediate family." Then Brooke's voice dropped, shifting into a conspiratorial lower register. "I fixed the Trent problem, though." "What did you tell him?" Cheryl asked. "I told him she talks about me all the time, that she respects what I have built." Brooke let out a short, sharp laugh. "God, Mom, you should have seen her face at the shower. She ate it up. She is so easy." Laughter. Both of them. It wasn't a cruel laugh. It was worse. It was dismissive. It was the laughter of two people discussing a gullible child who still believed in Santa Claus. "That is our Thea," Cheryl sighed. "Write the check and smile." I did not move. I did not breathe. The conversation with Trent had not been a breakthrough. It had been a script. Brooke had fed him his lines, knowing exactly which buttons to press to disarm me. She knew I starved for validation, so she gave me a crumb just enough to keep the ATM operational. Strategic cruelty. It was weaponized empathy. I stepped back from the bathroom door. I turned and walked silently into the guest bathroom further down the hall. I locked the door. I sat on the closed toilet lid. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I felt a cold, hard numbness spreading through my chest, turning my heart into a stone. I pulled out my phone. I opened the text thread with Marin. I deleted the draft about pushing the timeline. I erased the hope. I typed a new message. My fingers were steady. I heard them. "You were right. All of you were right." I hit send. I stood up and flushed the toilet a noise to cover the silence of my own devastation. I washed my hands. I looked at myself in the mirror. The woman staring back was not the hopeful sister who had sat at the shower. She was a witness. I unlocked the door and walked back downstairs to help unload the car. I carried boxes. I smiled. I nodded. I played my part. 32 years of practice had made me perfect. 10 days before the wedding, the vibration of my phone against the kitchen counter sounded like a warning shot. I was washing dishes, scrubbing a plate harder than necessary, when the group chat notification lit up the screen. Brooke. Who is this Marin person? Seriously. I dried my hands on a dish towel, my heart doing a slow, heavy thud against my ribs. I picked up the phone. Thea. She is a colleague from the foundation. I told you that. Brooke. Yeah, but she is weird. She is always watching. Like she does not talk, she just stares. It is creeping me out. I stared at the screen. Brooke's instincts, usually dulled by her own self-absorption, were suddenly razor-sharp. She was sensing the lens. She was feeling the weight of an observation that wasn't admiring. Thea. She is just observant. It is her job. Brooke. What does she even do? Thea Media Consulting. I waited. 3 dots bubbled. Then stopped. Then bubbled again. Brooke was Googling. I knew it as surely as I knew the layout of her apartment. She was typing Marin Calloway Media Consulting into a search bar. Marin had prepared for this. She had built a LinkedIn profile that looked boringly legitimate, filled with corporate buzzwords about synergy and narrative strategy. It was a shell company of an identity designed to deflect exactly this kind of scrutiny. Brooke? Okay, whatever. But I do not want her floating around. I want her at table 14. With you. Cheryl, good idea, honey. Keep them together. I set the phone down. Table 14. The exile table just got a second chair. I looked at the black journal sitting on the counter. Brooke thought she was punishing me by putting Marin in the back. She didn't realize she was putting the camera exactly where the lighting was harshest. 3 days later, the phone rang again. This time, the screen didn't say Brooke or Mom. It said Dad. My father never called. Dale Garrison communicated through intermediaries or silence. If he was calling me directly, the system was not just threatened. It was shaking. I answered in the living room, standing in the center of the rug I had bought because it looked like the one in my parents' foyer. Hey, Dad. Thea. His voice was gravel and hesitation. You got a minute? Sure. Your mother is uncomfortable. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. Brooke is uncomfortable. We would all appreciate it if you kept things simple at the wedding. Simple how I asked, though I knew the answer. Don't bring attention to yourself, Dale said. Don't bring that woman. Just be Thea, the Thea we know. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. The Thea we know. The Thea they knew was a ghost. She was a checkbook with a pulse. She was a woman who swallowed insults like vitamins and thanked them for the bottle. Marin is my +1, I said, my voice trembling slightly. I am bringing her. Silence stretched across the line. It was the longest silence of my life. I had never said no to him. I had never drawn a line in the sand. Thea, he said finally, his voice dropping an octave. We gave you a roof. We gave you a name. That should count for something. There it was. The debt. The invoice presented at the end of every transaction. We took you in. We saved you. It was the trump card they played whenever I forgot my place. It does count, Dad, I said. I gripped the phone so hard my fingers ached. It counted every time I wrote a check. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. I sat down on the floor right there in the middle of the rug and breathed until the room stopped spinning. I had defied the king. I was still standing, but the victory was short-lived. 5 days before the wedding, on a Tuesday evening that felt suffocatingly hot, Marin called. Marin never called unscheduled. We had a protocol. Texts for updates, emails for evidence, scheduled calls for strategy. I answered on the first ring. What I asked. He says the segment is too personal, Marin said. Her voice was flat, stripped of its usual professional polish. Who the executive producer? He watched the cut. He says it reads more like a family dispute than a systemic investigation. He wants more data, more families. He wants a broader institutional angle before we air. My stomach dropped through the floor. What does that mean? He is talking about pushing it to next season. Next season, I repeated. Next season is 6 months away. I know. The wedding is Saturday, Marin. I know, Thea. I stood up, pacing the length of my small kitchen. The documentary was my shield. It was the armor I had built to survive the wedding. Without it, I was just a woman in a green dress walking into a firing squad. I fought for it, Marin said. I am still fighting, but he is the one who signs the checks. So it is dead, I asked. The story is dead. Not dead. Delayed. Delayed was dead. Delayed meant I walked into that tent alone. Delayed meant Brooke won. Delayed meant the $30,000 was just another donation to the shrine of the Garrison family image. I looked at the journal on the shelf. 47 entries. Every slight. Every coded insult. Every receipt. All of it useless. Just a diary of a woman who complained too much. But Thea Marin said, her voice softening. I am still coming to the wedding. Why, I asked, bitterness coating my tongue. If the cameras aren't rolling, what is the point? Because I am not just a journalist on this story anymore, she said. I am your friend, and I want to be there. I closed my eyes. The line between professional and personal had dissolved weeks ago, but hearing her say it didn't comfort me. It made me feel pathetic. I needed a friend because my family was a corporation and I was a laid-off employee. I will let you know, I said and hung up. The apartment was quiet. I sat at my desk and stared at the journal. It felt heavy like a brick. Later that night, the darkness of the apartment felt heavy too. I sat on the couch, the television off, the city sounds drifting in through the open window. I picked up my phone and called Ren. Accept what Ren asked, her lawyer voice sharp even at 10 o'clock at night. That this is what family looks like for me, I said. I sounded tired. I sounded like the old Thea. Back table. Back of the photos. Back of everyone's priority list. Maybe that is fine. Maybe I have been making it worse by fighting it. Maybe if I just stop struggling, it won't hurt as much. Is that Thea talking, Ren asked? Or is that Cheryl's voice coming out of your mouth? I didn't answer, because that sounds exactly like what they have trained you to say, Ren continued, her voice rising. Don't make waves. Be the bigger person. Be the Thea we know. That is their script, Thea, not yours. You are reading from their teleprompter. I know you are right, I said. Intellectually, I know. But I didn't feel it. I felt the familiar pull of the current. It was so much easier to just drift, to write the check, to sit where they told me, to smile for the picture even if I wasn't in it. The old self was dying, but the new self wasn't strong enough to stand up yet. I was in the space between, and it was terrifying. I have to go, Ren, I said. I hung up. I turned off the lamp. In the dark, I thought about the woman on the broadcast, the one I had imagined in the future, the one who raised her glass and said, "Enjoy it." That woman seemed impossible now. She belonged to a timeline that had just been canceled by an executive producer in New York. I sat in the dark and looked at the bookshelf. The journal, the adoption file, 2 sealed things, both useless. I was going to the wedding in 5 days, and I had absolutely nothing to protect me. Thursday night settled over Annapolis like a heavy blanket. My apartment was dark, save for the orange rectangles of light cast onto the hardwood floor by the street lamps outside. I stood in the living room, my feet cold against the wood, listening to the silence. It was the silence of a life that had stalled. The documentary was dead or near enough to dead that it made no difference. The wedding was 48 hours away. And I was alone. I looked at the bookshelf. The black moleskin journal sat there filled with 3 months of evidence that now felt like a list of complaints nobody wanted to hear. Next to it was the manila folder. Thea, adoption records. I had carried that folder with me for 20 years. I had moved it from dorm rooms to first apartments to this condo. I had dusted it. I had protected it. But I had never opened the sealed envelope inside. I told myself I didn't need to. I told myself I knew who I was. I was the girl the garrison saved. But standing there in the dark with my armor stripped away and my allies silenced, I realized I didn't know anything at all. I walked to the shelf. My hand moved through the orange light and pulled the folder down. It felt soft with age, the paper worn smooth at the corners. I sat on the floor right there in the patch of street lamp glow. I opened the file. There were court documents, stiff and formal. A social worker's report written on a typewriter. Medical records listing vaccines and weight percentiles. And at the bottom, a white envelope. It was yellowed around the edges. There was no name on the front, just one word written in a handwriting that slanted forward, urgent and determined. Someday. My fingers trembled. I slid my thumb under the flap. The glue was brittle. It gave way with a soft, tearing sound. Inside was a single sheet of stationery with a faded floral border. I unfolded it. The handwriting was shaky, the ink slightly uneven, as if the person writing it had to stop and rest between words. My darling girl. I am writing this because I may not be here when you are old enough to read it. The doctors say I have time, but I do not trust doctors as much as I trust my own body, and my body is telling me to hurry. I want you to know why I made the choice I made. I gave you away because I wanted you to have more, not less. A father. Stability. A full table at Thanksgiving. I stopped reading. I put my hand over my mouth to stifle a sound that was half sob, half gasp. More, not less. She wanted me to have a full table. But I need you to know, the letter continued. I did not give you away because you were not enough. You were everything. You are the best thing I ever made, the only perfect thing in my imperfect life. If you are reading this, it means someone raised you. I hope they told you how remarkable you are. I hope they reminded you that being given away is not the same as being thrown away. You are not a burden. You are not a charity case. You are not someone else's good deed. You are my gift to the world, and the world should be grateful. Love always and completely. Your mother, Elena. I read it twice, 3 times, 4. Elena. Her name was Elena. She had given me up because she wanted me to have more. She trusted the world to be kind to me. She trusted that the family who took me in would see me as she did, as a gift, as the only perfect thing. And instead I got the Garrisons. I got a family who treated me like a tax write-off. A family who took the gift and put it at the back table. A family who made me pay for the privilege of being tolerated. Elena wanted me to have more. The Garrisons had spent 32 years giving me less. Something inside me, some structural beam that had been holding up the weight of my life, finally snapped. But the building didn't collapse. It rearranged itself. I wasn't the girl who wasn't enough. I was the girl who was given to people who were too small to hold her. I stood up. I walked to the mirror in the hallway. The glass reflected a woman in pajamas, her hair messy, her face pale in the gloom. But for the first time in my life, I didn't see the adopted girl. I didn't see the ATM. I didn't see the inconvenience. I saw Elena's daughter. I saw the woman who built Second Roots from nothing. I saw the woman who helped 23 children find homes this year. I saw the woman who had paid $30,000 without flinching because she was generous, not because she was weak. I picked up my phone. I didn't call Ren. I didn't call Marin. I opened the voice memo app and hit record. You are not a burden. I told myself, my voice raspy but steady. You are not a charity case. You are Elena's gift to the world, and you are going to that wedding. Not for them. For you. I stopped the recording. I saved it. I went to sleep on the couch, holding the letter against my chest like a shield. Friday morning arrived with a blinding clarity. The sun flooded the apartment, exposing dust motes dancing in the air. I woke up stiff, my neck aching from the couch cushions, but my mind was clear. It was the kind of clarity that usually comes after a fever breaks. I made coffee. I drank it standing at the window watching the boats move out of the harbor. Then I called Maren. She answered on the first ring, sounding wary. "Thea, I found a letter," I said. I didn't say hello. I found a letter from my biological mother last night. Her name was Elena. There was a pause on the line. Then Maren's voice, soft and careful. "Okay." She gave me away because she wanted me to have more, I said. Not less. More. "Thea." The segment, I interrupted her. "Whether it airs or not. I need to tell you something. This was never about revenge. I thought it was. I thought I wanted to expose my family. I thought I wanted to burn it all down." I took a breath. "But that is not it. It is about every adopted kid who is sitting at table 14 right now. Every kid who thinks the way they are treated is normal. Every kid who writes checks hoping to buy a seat they already deserve." I looked at the letter lying on the coffee table. "I am going to that wedding tomorrow," I said. "I am bringing you. And whatever happens, happens. I am not going to hide. I am not going to be small." Maren was silent for a long moment. I could hear the background noise of her office, the hum of equipment. "I should tell you something," she said quietly. "I called the producer this morning. And he watched the rough cut again last night. He called it the most important family story we have told in 5 years. My hand tightened on the phone. He greenlit it, "Thea. Full segment. It airs in September." I waited for the surge of triumph. I waited for the vindication. But what I felt was peace. A strange, unfamiliar stillness. The documentary would air. The world would see. But even if the producer had said no, even if the tapes were burned, I would still know who I was. The camera didn't make me real. Elena did. "Okay," I said. "Okay." Maren sounded surprised. "Okay. I will see you tomorrow." I hung up. I finished my coffee. It tasted better than it had in months. That afternoon I called Ren. I put her on speakerphone while I stood in front of my closet. "So what is the strategy?" Ren asked. "Do we have a plan? Are we going in guns blazing?" "There is no strategy," I said. I pushed aside the beige chiffon dress Brooke had suggested. She had sent me a link to it months ago with a note. "This would be great for blending in." "I am going to be myself," I told Ren. "For the first time at a family event, I am going to be completely, unapologetically myself." "And if Brooke starts something," Ren asked, "then Brooke will do what Brooke does, and 200 people will see it, and 3 cameras Brooke paid for will record it, and I will still be standing when it is over." Ren let out a low whistle. "That is either the bravest thing I have ever heard or the craziest." "Maybe both," I said. I reached into the back of the closet. My hand closed around fabric that felt cool and substantial. I pulled it out. It was a deep emerald green dress. I had bought it 2 years ago and never worn it because I thought it was too bold, too visible, too much. It had a neckline that framed my face and a skirt that moved when I walked. It was a dress for a woman who took up space. I held it up against my body in the mirror. Green, the color of money, the color of life, the color of my mother's eyes in the only photo I had ever seen of her. "I am wearing the green dress," I told Ren. "Good," Ren said. "Wear the hell out of it." I hung up. I looked at the dress, then at the letter on the table, then at the black journal full of evidence. Tomorrow was the wedding. Tomorrow Brooke got her 3 cameras. Tomorrow the Garrison family got their perfect day. And tomorrow the +1 was coming. The June sun hung low over the Chesapeake Bay, casting a golden net across the water that made the waves look like hammered metal. The venue was a white tent perched at the end of a private pier, billowing in the breeze like the sails of a ship that wasn't going anywhere. It smelled of salt water and the $6,000 worth of gardenias that lined the aisle. I walked toward the entrance. The gravel crunched under my heels. I was wearing the green dress. It was a deep emerald silk that moved like water against my skin, cut with a neckline that framed my face and a back that plunged low. It was not the beige chiffon Brooke had suggested. It was not a dress for blending in. It was a dress for a woman who intended to be seen. Maren walked beside me. She wore a navy blazer over a silk camisole, sharp and professional, her eyes already scanning the perimeter. She looked at the tent, then at the water, then at the guests filing in. "You paid for all of this," Maren said. It was not a question. Every flower, I said. Every chair. We reached the entrance. A sign on a polished brass easel welcomed guests in calligraphy. Brooke and Trent, forever begins today. And right below it, in smaller but legible print, please note that this event is being filmed for posterity. By entering, you consent to being recorded. Maren tapped the sign with a fingernail. "Irony is a patient fisherman," she murmured. We found our seats. Brooke had been precise. Table 14 was tucked into the back corner, wedged between a support pole and the swinging doors of the catering kitchen. Every time a server walked out with a tray of appetizers, a blast of hot, garlicky air hit us. Maren sat down and adjusted her blazer. She looked at the centerpiece. It was a small bowl of hydrangeas significantly smaller than the towering gardenia arrangements on the tables near the dance floor. "You paid $30,000 for this wedding," Maren said, her voice low. "And they put you next to the dishwasher." I looked at the table. I looked at the kitchen doors. I looked at the green dress draped over my legs. "Next to the dishwasher," I said. "In a green dress, with a journalist." Maren looked at me. A smile touched the corner of her mouth. "Whatever happens tonight," she said, "you are going to be fine." "I know," I said. And for the first time in 32 years, I meant it. That is the part they never counted on. The ceremony was brief. Brooke walked down the aisle to a string quartet playing a pop song, slowed down to sound classical. She looked beautiful. She looked perfect. And hovering around her, moving with the precision of a SWAT team, were 3 videographers. One was operating a drone that buzzed faintly overhead. One was walking backward down the aisle, getting the reaction shots. One was steady-camming her face. Brooke beamed at them. She performed her vows for them. She wiped a tear away at exactly the right moment for the lens. I watched from the back row. I didn't feel the old ache in my chest. I didn't feel the desperate wish to be up there standing beside her. I felt the detachment of someone watching a movie they had already seen the ending to. I knew how this story ended. Saying, the reception tent transformed as the sun went down. Candles flickered in glass hurricanes. Champagne flowed into crystal flutes. The air grew thick with laughter and the clinking of silverware. I sat at table 14 sipping water. The servers rushed past us, their trays held high, ignoring us entirely. Trent appeared out of the crowd during the cocktail hour. He looked flushed and happy, his tie already slightly crooked. He spotted me and navigated through the tables, dodging a waiter with a tray of crab cakes. "Thea," he said, "you look incredible. That dress. Wow." "Thank you, Trent," I said. "It is a beautiful wedding." He leaned in, lowering his voice. "It wouldn't have happened without you. Literally. I know Brooke can be particular, but she appreciates it. She really does." I studied his face. He looked so earnest. He looked like a man who believed he had married a woman who shared his values. He didn't know he had married a brand manager. "Take care of her, Trent," I said gently. I meant it. I meant good luck. He squeezed my shoulder and bounded away toward the head table back to the light. Maren watched him go. "He doesn't know," she said. "Not yet," I said. The DJ announced the transition to dinner. The room settled, and then the coordinator stepped out with a clipboard. "Immediate family for formal photos in the garden, please," she called out. Immediate family only. I watched them rise from the head table. Brooke, Trent, Dale, Cheryl. A guest at table 6. A woman I didn't know leaned over to her husband. "Isn't Thea the bride's sister?" Her husband shrugged. Maybe they did hers earlier. They walked out to the garden. The videographers followed them, the red lights on their cameras glowing in the dimness. They were capturing every moment. They were documenting the joy, the unity, the exclusivity. They were documenting the empty chair where I should have been. I sat still. I folded my hands in my lap. I let the moment pass through me like wind through an open door. Old Thea would have been in the bathroom crying. New Thea was taking notes. Dinner was cleared. The sun was gone, replaced by the soft golden glow of the tent lighting. It looked like a magazine spread. It looked like Brooke's Instagram feed come to life. The DJ lowered the music, and now he boomed. Some toasts for the happy couple. The maid of honor went first. She cried. She talked about sorority rush. The best man went second. He made a joke about Trent's golf game. Then my father stood up. Dale Garrison held a microphone like it was a foreign object. He cleared his throat. "Brooke has always been our pride and joy," he said. "From the moment she was born, she brought a light into this house that no one else could match. No mention of me." In a room of 200 people, the father of the bride did not mention her sister. He raised his glass. "To Brooke and Trent, remember, son, blood is everything. It is the only bond that holds." He sat down. Cheryl stood up. She dabbed at her eyes. "To my baby girl, the light of our family." I reached into my clutch purse. My hand closed around the manila folder I had folded in half. Inside was a single sheet of paper. I stood up. I wasn't near a microphone, but the room was quiet, and my voice carried. "I want to say something about this wedding," I said. Heads turned. The murmur of conversation died out. People twisted in their chairs to look at the back corner at the woman in the green dress standing next to the kitchen doors. Brooke's head snapped toward me. Her smile faltered, then locked back into place tight and brittle. I walked toward the center of the room. I didn't rush. I held the folded paper in my hand. "This venue," I said. "These flowers. The food you have eaten tonight. The dress my sister is wearing." I stopped in the middle of the dance floor. I looked at Brooke. I looked at my parents. I held up the paper. "This is a bank transfer confirmation," I said. $30,000. From my account to this wedding. Every chair you are sitting in, every glass you are holding, I paid for it. A gasp rippled through the room. It started at the front and rolled back like a wave. Brooke stood up. "Thea, don't," she hissed. I turned to the guests. "I paid for it because that is what I do," I said. My voice was steady. It was the voice of the woman who ran a foundation, the woman who negotiated grants, the woman who was Elena's daughter. That is what I have always done. I pay for things, and I sit at table 14. And I don't complain, because I am the adopted one, and the adopted one should be grateful. I saw the shock on their faces. The word adopted hung in the air, stripped of its polite camouflage. "So I want to raise a glass," I said. I looked directly at Brooke. I didn't hate her. I just saw her. I saw the fear behind her eyes, the desperate need to be the most important person in the room. "Enjoy it," I said. "It is the last thing I will ever pay for." I set my glass down on the nearest table. I didn't slam it. I placed it gently next to a centerpiece I had bought. The silence was absolute. Then Brooke screamed. It wasn't a word at first. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated rage. She shoved her chair back so hard it tipped over. "Are you done?" she shouted. Her face was red, the veins in her neck corded. "Are you done making my wedding about you?" She stepped around the table, advancing on me. The cameras turned. All 3 of them swiveled to follow the bride. The red lights were steady. "This is what she does," Brooke yelled to the room, gesturing wildly at me. "She has always been dramatic. It is not easy being adopted. Okay, we get it. You have issues, but you do not have to ruin my night. She stopped 5 feet from me. She looked at me with eyes that were black holes of resentment. Go find another table, adopted girl. The words rang out, clear, bell-like. Someone laughed. It was a nervous, shocked sound, but it was there. I looked at the videographer nearest to me. He was zooming in. Then a chair scraped at the back of the room. Wait, just a moment. Marin stood up at table 14. She walked toward the dance floor. She didn't look like a consultant. She looked like she was walking into a congressional hearing. She carried nothing but a small white business card. Brooke spun around. Who are you? Marin stopped. She held up the card. Cheryl gasped. Her hand flew to her mouth. She recognized the logo. She watched the show every Sunday night. For the past 3 months, Marin said, her voice projecting to the back of the tent, I have been producing a segment on financial exploitation in adoptive families. Thea Garrison is one of 12 individuals who shared their story. Brooke froze. Her eyes darted from Marin to me. You recorded us, she screeched. You brought a reporter here to record us. Marin didn't blink. I didn't record anyone, she said calmly. Maryland is an all-party consent state. Secret recording is a felony. I am well aware of the law. She paused. She let the relief wash over Brooke's face for one cruelty-filled second. But your videographer has been recording this entire event, Marin said. She pointed to the crew. All 3 cameras, professional audio. You hired them. You consented to the filming. Every guest who walked in passed a sign that said, "This event may be filmed." Brooke whipped her head around to look at the crew. The lead videographer looked uncomfortable, but he kept the camera rolling. He was paid to film the wedding. This was the wedding. Everything that just happened. Marin continued. Your sister's toast. Your response. The words, go find another table, adopted girl. It was all filmed by your crew, on your equipment, with your consent. The room erupted. People were standing up. Phones were out. The silence shattered into 1,000 whispers. Trent stood up. He looked pale, like all the blood had been drained from his body. He looked at Brooke. Is this true? He asked. His voice cracked. Trent, she is lying. Brooke grabbed his arm. She is twisting everything. Did you tell me those things about Thea to manipulate me? Trent asked. Did you tell me she chose to distance herself? Did you tell me she had emotional issues? Brooke stammered. She paid for our wedding, Brooke, Trent shouted. He pulled his arm away. And you put her at table 14 next to the kitchen. He looked at me. His eyes were wide with a terrible realization. I am sorry, Thea, he whispered. I didn't know. I know you didn't, I said. Marin stepped forward. She addressed the room, but her eyes were on Cheryl. I want to be clear. This segment is not about this family specifically. It is about a pattern that exists across this country. 12 families. Same dynamic. Always the adopted child who pays. Always the adopted child at the back table. She let that sink in. 17 million viewers will see this segment in September. I looked at Dale. He was sitting with his mouth open, a piece of bread halfway to his lips. He looked old. We gave you a roof, he stammered. You gave me a roof, Dad, I said. Elena gave me life. I said her name. I said it to them. I turned around. The green dress swished around my legs. I walked toward the exit, past the gaping guests, past the cameras, past the wreckage of the perfect image. Marin fell into step beside me. We walked out to the parking lot. The air was cool now, smelling of the bay and wet asphalt. Behind us, the music had stopped. The tent was glowing, but the party was over. Half the guests were already streaming toward their cars, phones pressed to their ears. Thea, I turned. Trent was running across the gravel. His tie was undone. He looked like a man who had survived a car crash only to realize he had lost his wallet in the wreckage. He stopped in front of me, breathing hard. I don't know what to say, he said. I didn't know any of this. That was the point, Trent, I said. You were not supposed to know. What do I do now? He asked. He looked back at the tent. Brooke was presumably inside screaming at a videographer who couldn't legally delete the footage because he had a contract to deliver the raw files. That is between you and Brooke, I said. But I will tell you what I have learned. You cannot love someone into being kind. They have to choose it. He stood there staring at me. He nodded slowly. I got into Marin's rental car. I buckled my seatbelt. Ready, Marin asked. Ready, I said. We drove away. I didn't look back at the venue. I didn't look back at the family I had spent 30 years trying to buy. I looked at the road ahead, lit by headlights stretching out into the dark. I felt lighter. I felt tired, yes, but I felt like I had finally put down a suitcase I had been carrying since I was 5 years old. September arrived with crisp air and turning leaves. The ballroom of the Annapolis Marriott was filled to capacity. It was the night of the Second Roots Foundation annual gala. But the room felt different this year. It wasn't stiff, it wasn't formal. It was filled with families, adopted families, foster families, biological families, children running between tables, teenagers laughing in corners. Photos lined the walls. Every child Second Roots had helped this year. I stood at the back of the room. I was wearing the green dress. On the large screen at the front of the stage, the logo for American Chronicle faded in. The room went quiet. Clips played. The woman in Denver, the man in Savannah. My interview. And then the footage. It was grainy but clear. Brooke's face contorted in rage. The gardenias behind her. The white dress. Go find another table, adopted girl. The sound of the gasp in the ballroom was visceral. Then Marin's voiceover. Thea Garrison found another table. She built it herself. The screen faded to black. Applause started. It wasn't polite applause. It was a roar. It was a standing ovation. I walked up to the podium. The lights were bright. I looked out at the sea of faces. I saw Marin in the front row smiling. I saw Wren beside her wiping her eyes. I took a breath. 6 months ago, I was sitting at table 14 at my sister's wedding, I said. I paid for that wedding. I paid for those tables. And I was told I didn't belong at any of them. The room was silent. Tonight I am standing at a table I built myself. Not with money, with purpose. This table has room for every adopted child, every foster kid, every person who has been told they are not really family. I looked at Marin. A woman named Elena, my birth mother, wrote me a letter before she died. She said I was her gift to the world. For 37 years I didn't believe her. I paused. I felt the truth of it settle in my bones. I believe her now. I stepped off the podium. The applause followed me. I walked toward my table. Wren hugged me hard enough to crack a rib. Marin gave me a nod, the journalist's seal of approval. Excuse me. I turned. A girl was standing there. She was maybe 16 with hair dyed purple at the tips. She looked nervous. Ms. Garrison, she said. My name is Chloe. I am in the mentorship program. Hi, Chloe, I said. My family, well, my foster family. They put me at the kids' table tonight, she said. I am 16. I wanted to say thank you. For the speech. I looked at her. I saw the hesitation. I saw the shame she was trying to hide. I knelt down so I was eye level with her. You do not belong at the kids' table, Chloe, I said. I stood up. I offered her my hand. Come on, let's find you a better table. She took my hand. We walked back into the gala together, two girls who had been given away finding our place in the world. The broadcast would air on Sunday. My family would see it. The world would see it. The broadcast had aired last Sunday. My family had seen it. The world had seen it. But it didn't matter anymore. I had already won. I had found my seat.